Okay, so I'm back. You can see the middle computer is no longer occupied. X went home because he just was really sick. So we got a couple of the other modelers here. We got P, who's been working on the dog for the short, and we've got Bank, who's working on kind of a launcher gun type of thing. And so they're both using Maya. And just to answer some of the questions that you guys posted to me, I'm just going to go through the list of them while showing you guys their screen. The average time it takes to model a character, I asked them this earlier just for the sake of time, is roughly 2 days. And so one of the other questions was how many hours in a day, and these guys work from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and they get an hour-and-a-half break. So roughly somewhere between 8.5 hours is their actual production time in a day. So you can think of it as 2 days being about 16 hours, to model. And so I'll also intermittently go in and kind of discuss some of the tools they're using, but right now I think it's pretty straightforward. In terms of consideration when rigging is the distance between limbs. And so some characters, for instance, there's a female character that has a neck, and so we had to give her the character a neck so the head can move more fluidly. But Punying Dai Mai? Yeah. So I'll have them open up the girl file just to show you the head and what we had to do there. In terms of what part of the character that's modeled first, it depends on the modeler, but Bank said that he models the nose first. So I thought that was kind of surprising. But yeah, typically the face is what is modeled first. So if you look here on the neck area, we had to create a space there to better animate the character. So that's an issue too. So you have to consider the arm length and the legs and the size of the legs, so that there's not a lot of collisions that are happening. She's missing her eyes, but that's okay. Okay. Next question. In terms of what characters are more difficult, we had a discussion about this earlier too, and I thought it was funny because I use these characters to illustrate. So these are the characters. If you go to my office, same thing. I got a bunch of toys. Just got a really nice 16-inch Astro Boy for about $30. But I asked them what was more difficult to model, and pretty much they said, again, it depends on the modeler, but something that has a lot of asymmetry. So this one right here has a lot of asymmetry, and so they voted for this one as being the most complex to model. If I could zoom out a little bit. They're using a couple different programs too. One is called ZBrush, which is equivalent to Mudbox that we have on campus in the lab, and the one that you're using currently, which is Maya. And so my second question along the same lines was, out of the other characters, which is the most complex? And I guess it depends on the program, they said. So this one is, considered an organic character, being flesh and carbon. Where this is a non-organic, being made of metal. So something like this would be easier to model in Maya, whereas this one would be easier to model in ZBrush. So if you have a chance to play with Mudbox, you should probably give it a shot, because these kind of characters are much more natural to create. Because there's something called typology, which is referring to the way a model is built, and Maya requires that you've got clean typology, whereas with Mudbox and ZBrush, it kind of creates the typology for you. And I've seen from the models that we've been working on that one small change in Maya takes a lot more time than if it were to be made in a sculpting program like ZBrush or Mudbox. So I'm just moving along to, this is a gun. It's more like a launching defense gun that the female character uses to jump into the air. And it's a nice little prop because it also breaks down in the short. So as a spoiler, her gun throws her in air, and she's got to find a way out of that situation. Other questions was, is it easier to model a crack or to texture it and put it in? And the answer is to texture it. So if there's scratches and indentations, it's going to be easier to texture that in. But it also depends on the size of the break. So if you were doing something as huge as the Grand Canyon and we had to create the canyon, then you'd have to model that. But if it was just a simple, something smaller, like a scratch on a car, it's going to be easier to texture that in. Another question is how they go from sketch to finished product. And as you see what's happening on the screen, it comes from a drawing. So it comes from a side view and a front view drawing, and it's built as like an image plane, and it goes onto a texture as a texture, and they use that to base it from. There's certain guys even at this studio that are really good at copying drawings. They make like almost near replicas, and then there's other guys at the studio who kind of interpret the drawings and kind of make their own version of it. So that's kind of a neat thing as a modeler, is it can be more, it usually is more technical, but you do have a little bit of room to develop further the characters. Because one thing that came up, which I found was interesting, was I asked X, who's away, to add some color to the boot of the female character, and he said that he needed the reference drawing updated. So one of the other concept artists updated the drawing, well, I did, and added the color to the boots, and he was able to go from there. So I thought that was interesting how faithful he is to the original concept design. So as we're watching the screen here, it's pretty similar to what I've been showing you in terms of the first couple classes when it comes to modeling. He's deleting faces, he's adding edge loops, and he's thinking about the typology, the way the edges conform to the shape. He's also modeling in halves, that way he can duplicate the other half. Notice how he's always looking at different views to make sure that he's not missing anything. One of the common mistakes that rookies make is that they will look at only one view, and then they'll get along so far to the point where they're unable to revert back. He's adding extra edges to match up the general shape from the drawing. He's making sure that there's quads, so that each face has 4 sides rather than 3. He's using the marking menu, and I think if you plan to pursue modeling further, you should look up creating custom marking menus. And he's using, if you hold the space bar, that's how you get a marking menu. And by default, you can get quicker access to menu commands. And I believe he's also got keyboard shortcuts that he's created that allows him to merge vertices pretty quickly. So he's trying to figure out how to deal with that top part of that curve. See how there's so many faces currently. So if you look at that, this face right here, there's like maybe seven edges to describe that. So he's got to figure a way. Because what happens is if there's too many faces, there's a potential chance that during the render it can create artifacting. So you have these kind of weird dark lines and shadows. You double click an edge and it'll select the entire row of edges, so you're able to just delete that really quickly. So there's just custom marking menu, extrude face, split polygon tools. He's using a tool called the Poly Bridge. To kind of combine these pieces. He was unable to do that, so now he's moved on to manually selecting faces and attaching them together. He's going to delete them, and he's going to attach the two vertices down the middle. So he's going to select those, and he'll merge them. If you look really closely, you see there's a double line, so he's selecting and repeating the last command. It allows him to do that. So he's always looking around, so you notice how there's a problem on the other side. So just going ahead and just deleting those. Alright, so hopefully you found this video informative.